Namaste friends. I'm recording this short video on a very special occasion. I'm recording this on the night of August 29, 2021 here in the US. It is already August 30th if you are living in India, and perhaps all of you are watching this on August 30th. And this is the occasion of Janmashtami, or the birthday of the great Lord Krishna, as it's been honored in India for many, many hundreds or thousands of years. We have been celebrating this occasion here in the spiritual community where I live, Ananda, Palo Alto. The last few days we had a huge Indian banquet, and also we had a glorious outdoor kirtan in honor of Krishna. And I've been meditating on thinking about Krishna these past few days. I thought it'll be worthwhile sharing just a short video message with all of you on this beautiful occasion. I would like to begin with a reading from Whispers from Eternity. We'll meditate on the words of Paramhansa Yogananda as we start tuning into Lord Krishna. This is whisper number 26, where Yogananda refers to Krishna and he says, "Come to me as Krishna, the divine cowherd. O Krishna, Lord of Hindustan, I sorrowed by the lonely Jamuna river, where thy flute notes thrill the air and led lost calves to their divine home. O lotus of love, musing on the sad absence of thy delusion-dispelling eyes, I saw thine invisible spirit take form, frozen by my devotion's frost. The divine body of sky-blue light walked with feet of eternity on the banks of my mind, planting there the lasting footprints of divine realization. I am one of those lost calves which followed thy flower footprints on the shoals of time. Listening to the melody of thy flute of wisdom, I now follow the middle path of calm activity by which thou hast led me through many portals of dark past into the eternal light." Now let's meditate briefly on those beautiful words of Paramhansa Yoganandaji, thinking about Krishna, tuning into his sky blue form, his love in our hearts. Om. As I was beginning to say, this is such a wonderful occasion of Janmashtami, the birth of Lord Krishna, the birth of Lord Krishna as it happened many, many years ago, hundreds or thousands of years ago, but also the birth of Krishna consciousness in each one of us that is happening constantly. That is the occasion that we are honoring. And I have very, very fond memories of celebrating and honoring this festival growing up in India, of course. I grew up in the southern part of India, and we had many interesting traditions. One of the things that we would do for this festival is we would mix rice flour with water, and using our fingers we would draw these tiny feet of baby Krishna all over the house as if he's running around, he's walking in the house. Especially starting from the doorway leading up to the altar or the puja room, we would draw these baby steps symbolic of Krishna entering our homes and our hearts, and of course taking his place in the altar as we do the puja. We also had this practice of making many, many delicious treats, both sweet and savory, for his birthday, everything involving butter and ghee and milk and yogurt. Krishna is said to be fond of all these milk products. One can assume safely that Krishna was not a practicing vegan. He enjoyed milk, yogurt and butter a lot. Of course, there's a lot of symbolism in that too. As I've been thinking about all of this, I was thinking of what Krishna truly represents. There's a lot that could be said, and I'm just going to share briefly on this beautiful occasion. Krishna, of course, dons many hats in that life, in that one incarnation that he played for all of us, the divine Leela. Starting with the baby, of course, that we are honoring right now on this occasion, but also as a young boy, as a cowherd, there are so many stories told of him, of how he had this mighty power even as a toddler that was running around, and he could take down demons. And of course, as he grows up to be a youth, he becomes the most charming young man in the town. All the women are attracted to him. He's always singing and dancing. He has many girlfriends all over the town, and he's constantly in the company of all those that are drawn to him. And later on in his life, we of course come to the story of the Mahabharata itself, where he becomes the emperor of Dwaraka. He becomes a king, but also a spiritual teacher. He becomes the guru of the Pandava brothers, especially Arjuna, and he guides them in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, of course, which is symbolic of the battlefield of life, and the inner battle that we are constantly in the midst of. Now, throughout all these stages of Krishna's life, what does Krishna represent for all of us? There are so many things that he represents. I cannot talk about it just in a brief time. But the word, the idea that has been coming to me these past few days was this thought of how irresistible Krishna is. That divine love that he brought for all of us throughout all the stories, and even that image, if you tune into it even today, just the image of Krishna, all the songs, the music, the traditions, the rituals, the festivals, everything that comes from India, what it speaks of is this irresistibility that the divine holds for all of us. As a baby, he's so irresistible. Everybody wants to go adore that baby. They cannot keep their hands off of him. They want to hold the baby. They love him. They pour their hearts out to him. And of course, as a young boy, the whole town is troubled by his mischiefs because he's not easy to handle, but still everyone loves him. And as a young man, that love, of course, takes on so many different forms, even romantic, because all the women are attracted to him. And again, at every stage in his life, what Krishna was a magnet of divine love. What he represents, one of the things he represents, is that irresistibility of God himself when God descends in that form. He's so charming, he's so beautiful, that love is so magnetic that we cannot stay away. We want to leave everything behind and run toward Krishna, the way the stories are told in Srimad Bhagavatam, which is one of the greatest scriptures that talks of this bhakti tradition of tuning into Krishna. All those stories that we hear from Krishna's life, they speak of how devotees were drawn to him, how they were immediately enraptured by his flute, the call of his flute, that even at night when somebody hears, they cannot but follow that sound and go where Krishna is. And that truly is that symbol. That's what we are honoring and worshipping on this day, that divine magnet that is calling to all of us, that aspiration that is drawing us upward. There is, of course, so much symbolism in the character of Krishna. I'm not going to talk about all of that today. It could be spoken about and there is perhaps some value in it, but all of that is of the mind. Krishna himself was pure love, and this love was so magnetic. Even as a boy, he was so difficult to comprehend. This idea of divine descending in that form and playing this Leela out is so difficult for the mind to even grasp. And yet, with every story, all that we feel is that love. This form of divine cannot be grasped with the mind. The mind cannot understand who Krishna is. There's this story, there are many stories, I'll just share a couple in case you don't already know all of them. There is the story of Yashoda, who was the mother of Krishna, not the mother who gave him birth, but the mother who nurtured him and who cared for him after he was born. When Yashoda wants to discipline Krishna, she wants to tie him to this huge stone. And when she brings a rope to tie this young toddler to the stone, she finds that no matter how long a rope she brings, it always falls a little short. That she cannot somehow reach the ends of the rope and she cannot really tie him. And of course, it doesn't make logical sense. He's a toddler and this is a stone that you can see. How could you not bring a big enough rope and completely tie it together? Well, the story is symbolic only because that rope is our mind. We are trying to hold it together. We are trying to hold divine in those conceptions and the constructs of our mind, of our thinking, put him in a box. But he cannot be. That boy is just going to run around and wreak havoc around the town. When Krishna starts eating sand, and he's like any baby does, they put everything that they can see into their mouth. Of course, Yashoda runs to discipline him, and she wants him to spit out whatever he swallowed from his mouth. And then as soon as she, slaps him and makes him open his mouth, she sees that inside his mouth is the entire cosmos. How is that possible? Because Krishna and Yashoda themselves are in the cosmos. How can it all be visible in that baby's mouth itself? You cannot make sense of all of this just from the logical mind. Indeed, what she was seeing in Krishna was that this baby, as small as he looked, as much he was running around and he was just pouring love and receiving love from all of us, he was God himself. And all these stories that we hear of Krishna again and again speak of how he can be drawn to us only with love. I remember visiting the holy town of Vrindavan, which is such quaint and an interesting and a beautiful place. If you have not been there, I highly, highly recommend it. It's such a beautiful place to spend some time. And I visited Vrindavan many times in my life. I remember the very first time I visited, I don't remember how many years ago it was, but I was sitting on this hand-pulled rickshaw. If you have not been to India, you probably don't know what I'm talking about. It's this cart that somebody's pulling, and they're taking you from one place to another. It's not a motorized vehicle, but it's just a mode of transportation in that small little town. And as he was driving this rickshaw, he was pulling this rickshaw cart, he was constantly yelling and screaming, Radhe, Radhe, Radhe. Radha, of course, I know is the beloved of Krishna, but I don't understand why is he constantly yelling out Radhe, Radhe. What does that even mean? And later on, I realized he's calling out Radha because everybody in the town of Vrindavan is referred to as Radha, because Vrindavan was the town of Radha, and Radha was the beloved of Krishna. And as this rickshaw driver, who I don't know if he knew any scriptures or he had studied any tradition, he was referring to everybody as Radha, because that is the tradition in the city of Vrindavan. What that truly speaks of is that all of us, not just those that are residing in the holy town of Vrindavan, but all of us are Radha. We are all, our individual souls are seeking union with Krishna, and we are constantly pining for the divine. Our hearts are pining for God. We have, as they say, we have the God-shaped hole in our hearts that cannot be filled with anything but Krishna's presence, Krishna's company. And so this rickshaw driver was calling everybody Radha and going through this town, and it was also deeply symbolic. Aren't we all those receptive souls? Aren't we all Radha who are seeking Krishna? Not only that, as stories were told in Vrindavan, every gopi, everybody in the town is looking for Krishna. They all want to be with Krishna. They all want to hear his flute. They all want to dance with him, sing with him, spend the rest of their lives with him. But Krishna, as much as he gives all of them energy, he wants to be with all of them, and he actually spends time with all of them, he is actually pining only for one person, and that person is Radha. And why is that so? Because Radha is also symbolic of devotion, the heart's love that we all hold, the power that is in the human heart itself, that power of bhakti or devotion. And Radha is symbolic of that. And that is another way that we can all meditate on this principle of Radha and Krishna, which is that we all are Radha. We are Radha, not our tiny little egos that is trying to run around and solve all the problems of the world, but the devotion and the aspiration in our heart, that is Radha. And that Radha is seeking Krishna. And here is the most poignant and the sweetest part of all of this, which is Krishna is seeking Radha. God is seeking that devotion. As Yoganandaji says in one of his talks, you can hear him say this even in his own voice, God has everything. The only thing that he doesn't have is the love of our heart. And he cannot have it unless we choose to give him, unless we choose to offer ourselves at the feet of the divine. So it is almost ironical, and I don't know how to make sense of any of this. How can God not have something? Isn't God everything? But apparently he doesn't. And what he doesn't have is the choice that we make. We make to love him, and that love pleases God the most. Krishna is that magnet calling to us. He is irresistible. The sound of his flute is enrapturing, and he's constantly drawing us to him with this magnetic force of love. And as he's doing that, he's also pining. He's pining for our love. He's pining for the devotion of our hearts. And when we are able to give him, and that is when we can have that true union, yoga. All of the spiritual practices and techniques that we are following are leading us to that goal of complete union with Krishna. So I hope you have a wonderful Janmashtami. You celebrate with all your friends and family and with Krishna in your hearts. And I hope all of us can always keep carrying Krishna and that divine love in all our hearts as we move through our lives. God bless you.